Have you ever just stopped and thought about the invisible rules that guide your day? I mean, why do we work a 9 to 5? Why do we stand in lines? Even something as personal as how we define a family. Well, it turns out these aren't just random habits we've all picked up. They're actually shaped by these powerful, unseen structures. So let's dive in and really uncover the hidden operating system of our society. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down what these structures, these building blocks of society, actually are. Then we'll zoom in on two huge examples, religion and the family, and see how they work. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at how all of this personally shapes each and every one of us. All right, let's get right into it. First things first, what are we really talking about when we use a term like social institutions? The best way to think about them is like the established patterns for how we relate to each other. They're not physical buildings or specific organizations, but more like the rules of the game that help a society function and, frankly, survive. They're how we pass down our core values from one generation to the next. And what's really wild is that while societies across the globe can seem incredibly different, sociologists pretty much agree that every single human society has these same 5 basic institutions. You've got government to keep order, the economy to make and distribute stuff, education to socialize the next generation, religion to provide a sense of meaning, and of course, the family for procreation and raising kids. So what's the whole point of these things? Well, the big idea here is that these institutions give us a kind of script. They make our lives way simpler by giving us these ready-made roles like student, parent, or employee, so we don't have to invent how to act in every single situation from scratch. They coordinate what we do and kind of control our behavior, which creates a stable, predictable social world for all of us. Okay, so now let's zoom way in on one of these institutions to really see how this works. We're going to take a look at religion because it's a place where two of the biggest names in sociology, Emil Durkheim and Max Weber, had completely different ideas about its fundamental purpose. First up, we have Emil Durkheim. For him, the answer was pretty simple. Religion is all about community. He argued that when people gather to worship, what they're really celebrating is the power of their own society, their own collective group. And Durkheim's breakdown is really fascinating. He saw religion as a kind of social glue. It creates cohesion by drawing this really clear line, separating the sacred, things that are set apart as special and forbidden, from the profane, which is just our ordinary everyday life. He believed this collective worship, this shared experience, creates a powerful emotional buzz that disciplines our selfish desires, brings everyone together, and gives the whole group a renewed sense of energy. But then, along came Max Weber. He looked at religion and saw something completely different. He didn't see glue, he saw an engine. He made this incredible argument that a very specific set of religious beliefs was actually the driving force behind the rise of modern capitalism. So Weber's whole theory was that the Protestant ethic, specifically from Calvinism, created what he called the spirit of capitalism. You see, doctrines like predestination created this deep anxiety about salvation. I mean, how could you possibly know if you were one of the chosen? The answer was to work tirelessly in your calling, your worldly job, and see success as a sign of God's favor. This, he argued, fostered a new ethic of hard work, discipline, and rational profit-seeking. So you can really see the fundamental disagreement, right? For Durkheim, religion's main gig is holding society together. It's the glue. But for Weber, it's this powerful force that shapes individual minds and drives massive economic change. It's an engine. Two totally different ways of looking at the very same institution. And out in the real world, religion organizes itself in some very specific ways. Sociologists tend to classify these groups along a spectrum. You've got everything from a small cult with a charismatic leader that avoids the state, all the way to a massive state-sponsored church where basically every citizen is also a member and it's all run by professional clergy. Okay, now let's switch gears to another core institution that has seen just as much radical change, the family. Because just like religion, the family isn't some static, unchanging thing. It is transformed dramatically over the centuries. For most of history, the family was a huge, multi-generational economic unit. I mean, just picture those ancient Roman households, ruled by the oldest male patriarch, the paterfamilias. Then the Industrial Revolution came along, work shifted from farms into factories, and that gave rise to the smaller, more mobile nuclear family. And today, we see an incredible diversity of family forms, from single-parent households all the way to same-sex partnerships. And this evolution was no accident.
It was pushed along by these massive historical forces, the huge economic shift from farms to factories, powerful social movements like the fight for women's and LGBTQ+ rights that totally challenged traditional roles, new technologies that changed everything from reproduction to how we communicate, and, of course, huge demographic shifts like people living much longer lives.
Okay, so we've seen how these massive institutions work and how they change. But how do they actually affect us as individuals, often in ways we don't even realize?
Let's use education as an example. Think back to your own school days for a second. Beyond teaching you reading and math, schools also teach what's called the hidden curriculum. These are all of the unwritten lessons about values and beliefs, like respecting authority, being on time, being competitive, that quietly teach us our place in society and help keep things the way they are.
And this can have some really powerful effects. Just look at the self-fulfilling prophecy. It all starts with a teacher's expectation. Maybe they think a student is a high achiever, so they communicate that expectation, giving them more praise and attention. This, in turn, affects the student's performance, and they actually start doing better. The student accepts that label, and their improved work confirms the teacher's original belief. The prophecy, well, it becomes true. And that really brings us to the final question to think about. This cycle isn't just limited to schools. Think about the hidden rules and expectations in your own workplace, in your family, or in your community. What are the unwritten scripts that you follow every single day, and how do they shape the person you've become?